Hey gang, Marco Milano welcoming you back to the Alley Cat Workshop. I often walk into my shop and it's always at the beginning of my day. I'll grab a random board, put it into my vise, and then grab this beauty. This is a Veritas 4.5 custom hand plane. It's a piece of art. And all I do is I dial it in. I will more often than not also sharpen the blade, dial it in, and then just start taking some random shavings just for the sheer pleasure of it. It's just, there's a feeling about using a hand plane and then feeling the results on the wood, which is just fascinating. It's relaxing, it's fun, and before you know it, the floor right next to the board is just full of shavings, and then I've got a little bit of cleanup to do. Now today what I want to do is I want to take this guy, which is a cheap hand plane that I picked up at the Goodwill store where I do volunteer work. This is a number 3 hand plane, and it's got a little bit of rust. It's not in bad shape, honestly, but what I would like to do is just take it, strip it apart, and try to fix it so that it works, maybe not as well as this guy, but you know what I mean, at least get some good results out of it. So let me take this apart and get going on the restoration. Should be fun. Just one more. Just so nice. Even where the knot is, it just slices right through. It's just so satisfying. Alright, enough play. Let's get to work. Alright, so I bought this plane for a whopping $5 at the Goodwill store I volunteered at. It's a Mastercraft number 3 plane, year unknown, likely 70s or 80s. That's what I saw on the internet. It was made in England, which should be a good sign. We'll see about that. So the first order of business was to fettle the sole, i.e. flatten it. I was expecting it to be in bad shape, and guess what? I was not disappointed. So I started by putting some blue marker on the sole and then rubbing it on 220 sandpaper. Just a couple of strokes. Once I took a look at it, I realized that only the markings on the outer edges disappeared. That means that it's high on the edges and low in the center. So what I decided to do is go to 80 grit sandpaper and go to town for 20 minutes. So most of the sole got flattened out quickly actually, but it's just a spot near the back that just wouldn't cooperate. And the shavings, you see just the amount of steel that's on the floor is pretty impressive. But it goes away with the shelf vac. It's good to know. Now, once I was done with the sole, I just flipped the plane on its side and went back and forth on the 80 grit sandpaper. The good news is whatever rust was on the sides disappeared almost instantly. So these steps, I repeated them on the 120, as you see me here. Or as you see me, sorry, just moving to the 120. But it did that on the 120, 180, and 220 sandpaper. All in all, it took about 30 minutes and I was done.
to the blade, namely the back of the blade. So I started lapping it on my 8,000 stone, but once again I was not disappointed to see that it was not flat one bit. So I took out my combination 1,000, 4,000 water stone and moved my way up the grits. It was the best thing to do. Last operation for the day was to flatten out the edge of the chip breaker. I did not even bother testing its flatness, as it was visually obvious that it was nowhere near flat from the get-go. Here you see me, I'm actually on my 4,000 water stone, so I'm actually made progress already. And it's actually quite fast going at this point. Some of you may cringe at this moment as I take out a file and round out the corners of the blade. I do that to accentuate the eventual camber that I will add to the blade. Next step is to work on the primary bevel. For that, I'm going to be using my Veritas Mark II power sharpening system. Now, this system comes with a guide and an easy to use jig to set the proper position of the blade in the guide. It comes with 4 abrasive discs, 80 times, 150 times, 320, and 1200. Now you'll guess that you do most of the work on the 80 times disc. That's the one that you're seeing on the screen right now, the blue one. I just find it's an ideal tool for an operation like this, i.e. getting a primary bevel done. Now you can actually do the secondary bevel, but I prefer to do that operation by hand. Alright, after maybe 10-15 minutes, I don't remember the exact time, I'm done with the 80 times disc. Flip it around, and I've got the 150 disc set up on the other side of the plate. Now, doing the last 3 grits, 150, 320, and 1200, is pretty fast. The main work happens with the 80 grit, and I can feel a burr on the back here. So I'm just going to keep going through the different levels. And at the end, it's a little tough to see, but the blade, the primary bevel, is actually it's got a mirror finish on it. It's actually pretty cool. So let's just watch as we go ahead through all these plates. Secondary bevel time. Now, I performed this step by hand, as I mentioned earlier, but I'm not one of these fancy guys that, sharpens my blades by using the force. That's not me. So what I use here is I use another Veritas tool, the Mark II Deluxe Honing Guide, and I use the camber roller option. Now, once the blade is properly set in the tool, in the jig, it's really easy to use this. Just take this, what I do is I put pressure on one of the sides and I do 10 strokes going backwards. Then I'll do the other extremity, again 10 strokes. Then I'll go to an intermediate position, I'll do 7 strokes, and then once I'm done, I'll do 5 strokes in the middle. I'll do this on my 1000, this is my 4000 water stone. And finally, this is my 8,000 water stone. Now once I've gone through all my stones, I'll take the blade out of the jig and I'll use what we call the little ruler trick. So you set your ruler on the stone. You'll see me do that in a second. And just by pulling back on the stone as it's sitting on the blade as it's sitting on the stone, you remove whatever burr was left on the back. And with that, I'm done. So it's time to assemble this. I start by putting the chip breaker and the blade back together, and then just reassembling the lever cap on top. It's ready for a test.
Alright, so we're getting to the end of the line on this little project. So my plane is back together. The sole has been flattened. It's nice and flat. Good job there. All the rust on the sides and on the sole is gone. It's done. The blade has been sharpened, and I can shave my hairs on my arms, so that's a good sign. So it's time to put it to the test. So what I did is for the first test, I'm putting the board this side up, so there's a little bit of a knot here, but it's really not that much. So let's give it a shot with a nice clean surface with very little imperfections and see if we can get some good shaving. So, all right, I'm gonna dial it in. Okay, a little bit more. Let's see what happens. That, my friends, is promising. Let's do it again. So for a $5 plane, that's not bad at all. That is not bad at all. All right, let's give it a shot on the side with the knot, shall we? Say that's rather conclusive. This plane will plane. And will plane, wow, rather nicely. That's a nice smooth surface. All right, guys, so let's wrap this one up. I think this restoration, if we can call it that, has been a success. A $5 plane bought at essentially a thrift store has been restored into working condition. So I now have a working number 3 plane. I'm happy. Might never use it, but I've got it. So with that, I'll leave it here, and hopefully catch you guys soon and catch you on another video. If you haven't subscribed yet, I would really appreciate it. Really helps the channel. The other thing is click that little like button. You guys know the drill. Leave a comment as well. I'd love to hear from you. All right, folks, have a good one, and I'll see you very soon. Let me have some more fun. So satisfying. So satisfying.